Red Dead Redemption has created quite the stir lately thanks to officially re-releasing for PS4 and Nintendo Switch with minimal enhancements, no PC version. Even with the addition of the Undead Nightmare and previous paid DLC, that $50 price tag doesn't look appealing, especially considering it's the same game released years ago. Regardless, it's still one of the most acclaimed video games of all time, with an incredible narrative that shouldn't be missed. That's reason enough to check it out, especially for those on the go with the Nintendo Switch. Of course, if you're going into Red Dead Redemption for the first time, it's worth knowing the story of Red Dead Redemption 2, released in October 2018 for PS4 and Xbox One before coming to PC a year later. It's a prequel set 12 years prior and focused on the Van der Linde gang. This isn't so much of an origin story of their formation as a chronicle of their final days and the downfall of their charismatic leader, Dutch van der Linde. How did things go wrong? How did they set up the first game's story? Spoilers follow for the entire main plot of Red Dead Redemption 2, so if you're going through it in preparation for the first game's release, turn back now.
Now all of you, get yourselves warm. Stay strong. Stay with me. We ain't done yet.
The players control Arthur Morgan, one of Dutch's closest friends and most trusted cohorts, though the gang prides itself on being outlaws, committing heists, helping the weak, and living above the law in the name of personal freedom. The Wild West is slowly ending. Blame the rapid progress of civilization for that one. The game starts with the Van der Linde gang trudging through Amberino, braving a snowstorm, and eventually arriving in Coulter. They're on the run after a ferry robbery went bad in Blackwater, resulting in a gang member's death and the fatal injury of another, and now trying to make the best of things while preparing for one final lucrative job. Along with Arthur and Dutch, the gang includes John Marston, the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 1, but younger and often in need of saving, like at the beginning of the game when he goes missing. There's also Abigail Roberts, John's companion, Horsea Matthews, one of the gang's senior-most members and advisor to Dutch, Susan Grimshaw, another longtime member who helped in setting up camp, and Micah Bell, who joined after saving Dutch's life several years prior. There are other supporting characters, from Javier Escuela, who accompanies Arthur to look for John in the mountains, to Charles Smith, a recent addition who excels in survival. Sadie Adler eventually joins after Arthur, Dutch, and Micah rescue her from their rivals, the O'Driscolls, who forcefully occupied her home. Strapped for cash and having left their stash in Blackwater, Dutch's newest plan is to rob a train which Leviticus Cornwall, an oil magnate, owns. While the robbery is a success, Cornwall subsequently hires the Pinkertons, a detective agency known for its more dishonorable methods of apprehending criminals.
I don't want to kill all these folk, Dutch. Just you.
In that case, it'd be my honor to join you. Excuse me, friends. I have an appointment to keep with...
I think your new friend should leave now, Dutch.
You're making a big mistake. All of you.
Andre Milton and Edgar Ross track down the Van der Linde gang, which moves to New Hanover to escape their pursuit. Arthur pursues various odd jobs to help support the camp, while Dutch continues to promise one final heist, which will be their ticket to retirement and escaping the law for good. It all sounds too good to be true, and while the gang, particularly Arthur, is still loyal to Dutch, there's that feeling of the walls closing in. Eventually, the gang has to shift again, this time to Rhodes after a run-in with Cornwall's forces. They plan to pit two families, the Greys and Braithwaites, against each other to potentially obtain their gold. Unfortunately, the two catch wind of this and stage an ambush, resulting in the death of another gang member. Jack, the son of John and Abigail, is also kidnapped. While the Van der Linde gang exacts vengeance against the families, Jack is moved to Saint Denis in Lemoyne. Even worse is that he was brought by Angelo Bronte, an eminent crime lord. So, what did they do? Confront Bronte directly, of course, who returns Jack without much fuss. He does try to trick them though, which leads to Dutch and company tossing him to an alligator. Spoiler, he doesn't survive. The gang's money situation still hasn't been resolved, which leads to them conducting a bank robbery in Saint Denis, which the Pinkertons subsequently catch wind of. They kill Horsea Matthews and arrest John. The surviving members, Arthur, Dutch, Micah, Javier, and Bill, escape and catch a boat to Cuba, and things are kind of looking up. until the boat wrecks due to a storm and they end up in warmer in the Caribbean. After helping slaves revolt against their plantation owners, the five return and reunite with the gang. Unfortunately, the Pinkertons attack again, this time targeting their camp.
I shall hunt you to the ends of the earth and the end of time. I killed your friends.
Really starting to irritate me.
Each and every one of you.
They're driven back for now, but Dutch begins to believe there's an informant in the gang, ensuring that the Pinkertons are aware of their every move and sabotaging them at every turn. Micah takes over as Dutch's advisor and begins enforcing the idea that maybe Arthur is disloyal, especially since the latter went with Sadie to break out Arthur, disobeying Dutch's orders in the process. In the midst of this, Dutch still wants to perform one last heist, even as the Vanderlyn gang slowly crumbles. If that weren't enough, Arthur learns that he's suffering from tuberculosis. His days are numbered, but he's still concerned for the gang's well-being. With the gang's numbers dwindling, one final heist on an army train has been planned. Arthur and Jon are on board begrudgingly, but the latter is encouraged to leave this life behind afterwards. Dutch abandons Jon during the heist, and Milton and the Pinkertons capture Abigail. Arthur and Sadie set out to rescue Abigail, and Milton reveals that Micah is the informant. Arthur returns to the gang, telling Dutch that Micah is the culprit. Jon returns around the same time, revealing Dutch's actions during the heist, and tensions flare. Jon and Susan side with Arthur, where Bill, Micah, Joe, and Javier go with Dutch. However, the Pinkertons arrive, assaulting their camp with Edgar Ross at the head. Micah shoots Susan during the commotion, and everyone except for Arthur manages to flee. He stays back to hold off the Pinkertons to help Jon, or claim the stash from Blackwater, it's ultimately up to you. It leads to him fighting against Micah. He's quickly overwhelmed due to his sickness, but Dutch arrives just in time to stop the fight. Eventually, he decides to leave both men to their fate. Arthur will subsequently die if you play honorably. If you've been dishonorable, he's executed by Micah. Either way, Micah and Dutch manage to escape. However, the story doesn't end there. We jump forward 8 years and discover that Jon made it out alive. He now works at a ranch while supporting Abigail and Jack. After an incident fighting off some outlaws, Abigail leaves with their son, convinced that Jon will remain set in his ways. Jon then sets out to build a ranch for his family with the help of several former gang members, including Sadie and Charles. Once everything is complete, Jon proposes to Abigail. However, Sadie returns with information about Micah. Teaming with Charles, they set out to avenge Arthur. Eventually locating his camp after fending off his forces, they're surprised at the appearance of Dutch. Micah subsequently takes Sadie hostage, and while a tense showdown ensues, Dutch shoots Micah while Jon finishes him off. Dutch departs while Jon takes the money from the failed heist at Blackwater, the start of everything going wrong, and returns to his ranch.
It's over, Abigail. It's all over.
After paying off his loans, he and Abigail are married. However, Ross is still alive and working with the Bureau of Investigation. He discovers Micah's corpse and manages to track down Jon. This sets up the events of Red Dead Redemption 1. While you could argue that Red Dead Redemption 2 must be experienced after the first game instead of before, it's still an incredible narrative. From the meaning of freedom and what it means to be an outlaw to ultimately finding redemption, its themes resonate strongly in its follow-up. It's a shame that shifty business practices from Rockstar and Take-Two have marred the re-release of Red Dead Redemption 1. However, those who have never experienced John Marston's journey are in for a treat. For those who played and replayed through Red Dead Redemption 2, witnessing the inevitable tragedy of Arthur and the Vanderlyn gang, we're just about done, for now. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.